The 70s really were the dawning of the golden age of educational children's television. This is where a lot of classic shows, ones that were popular beyond the 70s, came into be. These shows were meant to be entertaining and engaging for children, while also teaching math, science, basic social skills, reading. What I did here is I collected 8 from the 1970s, some that you will definitely remember if you grew up then, but then a few others that I think you might not remember, so it'll be fun. It's like an educational segment. You'll learn some new shows to go watch. In episode 145, I did a segment on 1980s educational children's shows. That is where you will hear me talk about Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Just putting that out there because I know they were big in the 70s as well. But because I first saw them in the 80s, I like to put them there as part of my childhood. A few of these shows were still in syndication and reruns when I was little, so I have minimal memories of them. There were 2 I immediately thought of as far as educational kids shows in the 70s. The first one is Electric Company.
Hey, you guys! Coming down the line, strong as it can be. Courtesy of the Electric Company.
The show was on PBS from 1971 to 1977. 780 total episodes. It's got that theme song that kids in the 70s remember. The original cast for the Electric Company included Bill Cosby and Morgan Freeman. The show was targeted for slightly older kids, ages 6 through 10 roughly. This taught basic reading and grammar. There were recurring sketches and songs. This show was hugely popular, but one problem was that, unlike Sesame Street, it didn't have these standout characters. Basically meaning the show was just the show. It didn't have anything that it could market out as far as toys or games. There was an attempted reboot in the late 2000s, but that seems to have only lasted a couple of seasons, because most reboots are not anywhere as good as the original. The other show I thought of immediately when putting together a list of educational kids shows from the 70s was Schoolhouse Rock.
As your body grows bigger,
Your mind must flower. It's great to learn, cause knowledge is power.
it's Schoolhouse rocking, the chip on the block of your favorite schoolhouse, Schoolhouse Rock.
That is Schoolhouse Rock with an exclamation point to remember the excitement of the show. The show originally ran on ABC from 1973 to 1985. Interestingly, despite it being on for that long, there were only 65 episodes in the original run of Schoolhouse Rock. This Saturday morning show included the normal math, reading, and grammar, but it was also economics, history, civics. There were famous songs like Conjunction Junction or the Bill song. Schoolhouse Rock is so known for its songs that in 1996, a 4-CD set of music from the show was released. It's got all your favorite songs from the show. Those of you that grew up watching it would remember. 3 is a Magic Number, Elementary, My Dear. And these songs were mainly all performed by jazz musician Bob Dorough. The next one you might not remember as much, and it was a show called Zoom.
Come on and zoom, 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 ah, zoom. You gotta zoom, 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 ah, zoom. Everybody's doing it, everybody's moving it, everybody's having a ball, yeah.
I got a little confused here because there was a Zoom show that came out in the late 1990s, and that show was on for 7 seasons, and I can remember my nieces Kaylee and Emma watching that show and that theme song. No, this is not that show. The original Zoom came out in 1972 on WGBH. Well, that was our PBS station. That's what it is here in eastern New England, eastern Massachusetts. The show had 155 episodes across 6 seasons from 1972 to 78. The show was inspired by Sesame Street and the Electric Company, but it was meant to have the focus be mainly on kids with no adults on screen. And it was mostly unscripted, which that could have been a recipe for disaster. The cast of kids were known as Zoomers. They had games, plays, jokes, recipes, all kid stuff like that. This is the show that introduced its own language. They call it the ubby-dubby language, where the syllable UB was added to most words. You're going to make me do it, aren't you? It sounds like this. Habai, haba, aber, yubu, dubing. Oh, God. There. I did it for you. What's interesting is the next one I'm going to talk about, Fat Albert, has the character Mushmouth that talks kind of like that anyway. I didn't put those back to back intentionally, and now I'm like, wow, that was no coincidences.
Hey, hey, hey! It's Fat Albert, and I'm gonna sing a song for you.
The full name of this show was The Adventures of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. The show was on for 8 seasons, starting in 1972. The show was known for its music. It was known for main character Fat Albert with his big red sweater and his trademark, hey, hey, hey. Are you getting all the voices just in this segment? There were cartoon segments. There were live action segments with Bill Cosby. There was always some sort of educational lesson with each show. That lesson would usually feature all the characters of the show in a junkyard playing their instruments and singing about whatever the lesson was. My first introduction to Fat Albert was in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters PSA that featured a kid that knows Fat Albert waiting for his big brother and Fat Albert saying he never knew he had a big brother. The next one I want to get into, some of you might not know of. Maybe you will. Do you remember Jabberwocky?
It's just a Jabberwocky world. Come on and see it with me.
Brothers and sisters, laughing and growing, hammers and blisters.
The show was on from 1974 to 78. This show was interesting because it started as a local show in Boston and then went national. There were real people and puppets. The show was geared towards kids age 5 to 10. It has a bit of a trippy animated intro, and there's a puppet Filthy Frank. I think I have memories of this show because growing up where I did, even long after this show was canceled, it would have remained in syndication in Boston into my youth. Because I remember this show as a kid, mainly because the name Jabberwocky was fun to say. Another one that's got a name that's fun to say but I had never heard of was Hodge, Podge, Lodge.
We're off to the forest to see Miss Jean. She lives in a house that is mostly green, except for the chimney and windows and walls, and one or two places just down the halls, and it's filled with rabbits and newt.
This was another PBS show. It was on from 1970 to 1977, and it really centered around nature. It was hosted by Miss Jean Worthley. And like I said, she would teach you about nature, trees, wild animals, all in this calm setting around the namesake Hodge Podge Lodge. A crazy fact about this show is that originally there were 760 episodes of Hodge Podge Lodge. And because of saving money, the Maryland Broadcasting Company that originally ran Hodge Podge Lodge, they taped over almost all of the shows. So out of over 760 episodes, only 30 of them remain. We go from a forgotten childhood classic of the 70s to one that was popular for decades, and that was Captain Kangaroo.
Good morning, Captain. Good morning, Captain. Won't you come on out and play?
Actor Bob Keeshan was the Captain Kangaroo character. The show was on for 29 seasons from 1955 to 1984. Keeshan based the show on the warm relationship between grandparents and grandchildren, and that's kind of the vibe he wanted to give off. Captain Kangaroo lived in the treasure house, and that's where most of the stories took place. There were guests and stories and colorful characters, puppets. This show had things like picture pages that Bill Cosby did, Captain Kangaroo reading stories, which is how a lot of kids got introduced to Curious George, the curious little monkey, characters like Mr. Green Jeans, and on the first of every month, Captain Kangaroo would have a birthday cake dedicated to all the kids that had birthdays that month. The last one I wanted to talk about, it's a slight bit of a cheat in that it's not a full children's show, but it was a segment during Saturday morning cartoons that a lot of you probably remember, or if you don't remember, when I play this music here, you might remember.
In the news, new weapons and a tough choice. It's always hard to decide how best to keep up our country's military power. One of the hardest choices, involving two new ways to deliver missiles, is in the news.
In the News was a 2-minute long segment that was on from 1971 to 1986. It would summarize news stories for kids and preteens. These ran on CBS, and they'd be considered something like a micro-series I've seen as a possible name for it. CBS News journalists Christopher Glenn, Doug Poling, and Gary Shepard, they narrated the segments. The logo was either a spinning sphere within the news written or a non-spinning one, depending on when you first remember seeing these. Finding these again came through my enjoyment of watching old commercial compilations on YouTube. That music played at the beginning of the brief segment. I said, wait, that kind of sounds familiar. It's like it unlocked memories from my childhood. Do any of you have that where you hear a noise, a song, and it just opens up memories from the past? That's what In the News did. 70s kids, do you remember any of those children's shows, educational children's shows? Like I said, I'm a child of the 80s, so I do remember briefly fleeting moments of Electric Company, Schoolhouse Rock, In the News, Jabberwocky because it was a Boston show. In the future, I'll do a 90s children's shows one, maybe 60s, but that's about it. There you go. Check out any of these shows and relearn stuff you forgot from when you were a kid.